I am Sylvie Barak, a somatic sex educator, sexological body worker, and stream practitioner with a background in neuroscience.
And I'm Angela Musio, a sexological bodyworker, stream practitioner, yoga teacher, and a mother. I help reconnect women with their pelvises to restore wholeness and pleasure. Together, Sylvie and I guide meaningful conversations, not only about science, body wisdom, and personal growth, but also about sexuality, eros, biochemistry, biomechanics, emotions, scar tissue, and the energetics of shame.
Join us as we discover the layers of the human experience and explore what it means to heal and thrive. Enjoy this next episode.
You know that pull, that spark inside. Your body speaks, don't let it hide. It's time to listen, time to feel, time to tap into the nerve to heal.
Hi, and welcome to the Nerve to Heal. Today, we're going to be talking about breath. And Angie, you actually gave us the idea for talking about breath today because you are doing a pretty interesting course right now that I was interested in hearing about. Tell us a little bit
Right.
about breath and what you're doing and how that relates to the work that we're doing.
Hello. Well, breathing as a yoga teacher and having a lot of awareness with breath and how that affects our bodies in general when we're engaging with people sexually in high pressure situations or feeling just disconnected. There's a lot of ways we've been told to breathe.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that sticks out the most for me is in yoga, you hear a lot about belly breathing because this is used as a way of helping you relax so that you can draw the breath out of the chest up in the clavicle area where it's limited, right? And that's called shallow breathing when we're just breathing up into like what feels like the bottom of the throat, right where the divot is in between the clavicle bone. Kind of a short breath when
Yeah.
we're rushed or just can't catch up with our thoughts and we're overwhelmed. So that kind of breathing tends to come in. I've used the cue many times when I've taught yoga to breathe into your belly. And also, I would get confused about how to hold my belly, but also allow it to move. Because, we talk a lot about the transverse abdominis, how that is the girdle of our core and the pelvic floor. So when you've had an injury, such as diastasis, prolapse, there's a lot of information about engaging your transverse abdominals. There's not a lot of talk about how you are able to engage that with your breath, which is this lateral breathing. So breathing into the rib cage and allowing it to move out.
Right. Like breathing into your back, right? Like that's what we do sometimes. We'll put our hands on a client's back of their rib cage and say, breathe into my hands. And it's so interesting because as I'm hearing you tell me about this, I'm like, oh, yes, we do that. That's what we do to help people move their breath down and
Yeah.
through their whole body. And so it's so interesting that you're now talking about it in this way of helping people with prolapse and everything else, because sometimes we do things as sexological body workers and we're not quite sure why we do them. We just know they're helpful. And then it's helpful to hear you talk about it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess that really
Right.
help with prolapse.
When we breathe out laterally, left to right, we're opening up the rib cage and bringing that awareness to the back body, the back bottom ribs especially. Because we tend to be front breathers, belly breathers, the back body loses a lot of connection. So by just breathing slowly into your rib cage, you start to open up left to right. So this allows the diaphragm to actually fully extend itself and fill up your rib cage. And when it's doing this, it begins to extend down as well and down on top of your organs and your intestines and the pelvic floor. And when you're taking that breath in and expanding out left to right that way, this is like a massage for your guts, for your pelvic floor, for your organs. It's actually quite vital to keep everything alive and vibrant, getting the blood flow moving. And then as you exhale, the diaphragm comes back up and the pelvic floor naturally comes back up as well. A lot of women experience the prolapse and they're doing Kegels or some form of the egg, trying to work these muscles, not realizing that it really starts with the breath and the breathing so that you come back to this natural state of being in your body, how it knows how to best help you heal and breathe.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that I've noticed is I've had the diastasis, I've had prolapse, I've had hernias, umbilical.
Same.
Yes.
Yeah. So many women have. I think that's something that's important to normalize just quickly. I think especially women who have gone through pregnancy and childbirth, it can feel at a certain point that your body's just falling apart and you think, oh my God, why on earth did I do this? Why did I put myself through having children? I've just made my entire body fall apart. And you sort of think maybe women are made for childbirth, but maybe my body wasn't, because why is mine doing all of this stuff and nobody ever talks about it? But then when you do talk about it, you realize that pretty much everyone has had some degree of diastasis or a little bit of prolapse or a little bit of pain on penetration or something else after giving birth. And you think, why isn't that more of a conversation that happens in women's spaces so that we all know what to expect? And then when it happens, we're ashamed about it. Like, oh, I'm not going to tell anyone that happened to me because then maybe they'll think my body sucks.
And I would absolutely join in on that and say that when it is shared, it's great that the outlook is laughable. People will laugh it off because, like,
Right.
oh, yeah, when I'm jumping on the trampoline, yes, I'm pissing my pants. We laugh it off because
Yeah. Hashtag mom life, peed my pants today. Like,
yeah,
no.
I can't go running because I'm wearing 2 pads, literally peeing myself. What the hell do I do about this?
Right.
And so it's approached with this humor, which is excellent for lightening the load. But I just think it's a lack of education that this can be remedied. Yes, with your slow awareness, your slow attention to something as simple as how you are breathing. And that's what kind of got us into this is that I'm taking a hypopressives course and it's a 30-day challenge. And by a woman named Nikki Scott. She's in the UK and she's pretty phenomenal with it, been doing it for a long time. But what I'm finding is the simplicity and learning how to breathe properly
Mhm.
in my rib cage is shifting how I can relate to my spine, my upper back, my shoulders, and my sacrum. Well, a lot more breath movement there.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is with prolapse, with all of the symptoms we get from childbirth or injuries and scars, it changes the way that we hold our bodies.
Yes.
So you start to go into a habitual pattern. Maybe that's like the shoulders roll forward, and maybe you have a little bit of a downward look with your head. And so the shoulders start to take on this congestion. I think with these hypopressives, there's arm movements in it. And as you move through them, you're working on obviously the pectorals, the scapulas, the rhomboids, levitators, serratus muscle. You're retraining them how to breathe with your breath so that
Yeah.
it starts to synchronize instead of being in this congested, habitual, either shallow breathing or just not full breaths.
Or not breathing. That's what I notice with a lot of people as well who come to me as clients, and they'll just periodically hold their breath and have to remind them, are you breathing? And they'll be like, oh, no. I'm like, why not? Keep breathing. So breath, just to lay it out there, affects so many different things. It definitely affects your physical health, but it 100% also affects your sexual health. It's really, really interesting how many common breathing mistakes impact our pleasure and our ability to reach higher levels of pleasure. And then, as Angie was saying, there's specific breath techniques that support pelvic health, that support relaxation, but that also support deeper sexual connection. And this is all really, really pivotal to the work that we do because we straddle that space between holistic health in general, your entire body and well being, and that focus as sexological body workers on your sexual health and your pelvic health in particular. And so, breath really is the key that ties both of those things in together. right? It's a complete regulator of our nervous system. It helps in both arousal and relaxation. What we see when we have clients is that breath patterns tell us a lot about intimacy and their ability to experience sensation and people's ability to experience pleasure and the arc of that pleasure and how they can control it or not. So that's why we're talking about breath today. And that's why it's such an interesting topic in general.
A simple thing that is profound.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we are automatically breathing. We are being breathed all the time. And we can consciously make a shift within how we use our breath and how do we want to play with it and hold it or send it in a more fuller place. Just bring more awareness to our body. Stopping and noticing our breath is embodiment. And it is the key to being right here, right now, and experiencing what you are doing in this very moment. So sexually or driving your car at the grocery store, you can do that. Just notice your breath. Slow down.
Yeah.
Slowing down is real key.
But even when people slow down, I still find that a lot of people can't breathe deeper down. They'll just breathe shallow, slow breaths. They're still not pulling down to the extent that they actually can, all the way down. Like I used to have a teacher who used to say, breathe into your asshole. And she used to say, breathe into your asshole. And then when you actually do that visual, you can be sitting up or lying down. And when you do visualize breathing into your asshole, that is a full breath. That's really filling your body with air. And it makes such a difference when you try doing that even. Oftentimes I'll have people tell me they just feel lightheaded when they breathe the way that I ask them to. And they'll say, oh, I don't like that. That feels uncomfortable. It makes me dizzy.
Yep.
And it's because they're just not used to getting the amount of oxygen that they're supposed to be getting into their body.
Right.
Sort of sipping little sips of oxygen through a straw and then cutting themselves off. Whereas we're saying, just fill your body with breath. We're so not used to that. And we have to get people used to what it is to really be oxygenated again.
I think that also speaks to obviously the nervous system because breath, every inhale is upregulation, exhale is downregulation. So when people are having a hard time finding their breath more fully in their bodies, that's a clear indication of this person may run more upregulated because they are maybe taking in more air, not fully getting it throughout the diaphragm, and exhaling shorter. That could be one of the things, but knowing that you are in control of your breath and that you can slow down to feel that breath through just playing around and expanding and seeing where you are at and how you can get it to a different place. Like it might even be a good idea right now to play around with getting that breath into the low ribs.
Right? Because that's where we're used to hearing people say, like you said, breathe into the belly. But don't, like, go to the sides of your ribs, to the bottom of your ribs, like where they sort of taper off, and put your hands there and then breathe in.
Moving into your hands.
Yeah. And like, see if you can move them back,
And
like
then,
more into your back than your front, and see if you can move your fingers there at the sides.
yeah.
That is a different type of breathing.
Yeah, I feel my tailbone drop when I do that, actually. So I feel some release by that.
Yeah.
And I would say that, you may not be able to notice these subtleties of what we're talking about, but if you continue to play around with that, you will notice it.
I notice it takes a lot of pressure off my mid back when I breathe like that.
Yeah. So that breath really helps move the cerebral spinal fluid, all the fluid through your spine.
Yeah. No, it's really, really a cool exercise. And what are the pros and cons of how you regularly breathe? I mean, the pros is that you're getting breath into your body, so good job. Any kind of breathing is good breathing. But when you're overusing that upper chest and clavicle breathing, you're creating tension in your shoulders, in your jaw, in your throat. And that's why people suffer so much from tight shoulders, tight jaw. And tight jaw, by the way, is very, very corresponding to having a tight pelvic floor. to having tight muscles, vaginal muscles as well, are very linked to jaw. So if you're having pain in your vaginal muscles, check your jaw, because most likely what we find when we work with clients is that their jaw is very clenched and we have to unclench it. And a lot of that can come from overusing that upper chest clavicle breathing, because it really puts a lot of pressure on the shoulders, on the jaw, on the throat. And that leads to pelvic floor gripping and stress patterns that then, again, affect your sexual health, your pelvic health in general. And of course, it's more common in people with anxiety and trauma and chronic stress. That's why we really see it in a pronounced way. But we're seeing it on an everyday level with, I'd say, I see it in about 99% of people. What would you say, Angie?
Oh, yeah. I am a jaw clencher. I clench my teeth at night. So I need to be very conscious of how am I holding myself during the day. One way that I do that is I just place the tip of my tongue on the roof of my mouth and let the back teeth just gently separate. It's definitely correlated with the hip flexors and pelvic floor. You have that tightness in the jaw. This is your neck, your jaw. This is part of the scalenes related to your root chakra, your genitals, your perineum. So what's happening up here is a great indication of how much can you uptake pleasure when you are with yourself, with a partner, sexually, erotically, just touching yourself. I think the more people I talk to, they feel a lot of that clenching.
I write it in various places. Like, I'll write myself a note that says clench your jaw, and I'll just leave it around in different places. And then when I come across it, I'm like, oh, yes, I should have clenched my jaw. If you just go up here to your cheeks, but feel into your jaw, you can definitely feel, most people will feel it. You'll go in and you'll press here, and then there's usually like an ow. Oh, that's tight. There's really no good reason why that area needs to be so clenched and so tight. And if you try and move your jaw from side to side again, you might find it's pretty restricted. It doesn't move a whole lot. Or opening it, people find that sometimes it's a little hard to fully open. And then we feel tension and tightness in different areas. And gua sha obviously helps quite a bit with things like this. And I'm seeing a lot more of these videos on Instagram for facial yoga and all the rest of it. And a lot of these people are doing it because they don't want wrinkles and they don't want jowls when they're getting older. But aesthetics aside, it's just helpful to release those muscles. It's helpful for your pleasure. It's helpful for your pelvic floor. It's helpful for how much tension you're managing to release from your body in general.
Yeah, another method to help release that tension is before you go to bed, grab 2 wine corks, place them in the back of each side of your mouth, and you can bite down on it. Not to the point where it's painful, but just enough where you're biting down, almost like releasing any tension, anger, or pent up whatever you have. Maybe you didn't say something that you really wanted to say to someone the other day, or you accepted to do something, you're mad about it. Place the 2 corks in your mouth and bear down on it for like 30 seconds. And then go to bed.
You can like growl a good measure. You can just be like, "Arr."
Definitely. And you'll drool like crazy. So have a paper towel under you or lean over a sink, whatever. But when you are releasing that tension in the jaw, it does help to release what you're holding on to in the clavicle and the scalenes. Also, the vagus nerve, we are restricting blood flow, breath, and everything's getting jammed up within the neck. We are limiting the access that the vagus nerve can communicate down through the rest of the body. So breathing in with that back body, lateral breath helps to relieve that pressure and get more communication going.
Yeah. You mentioned the vagus nerve. It goes all the way down from our brainstem.
It goes right down into the sacrum, which are the parasympathetic nerves. The sacrum is full of down-regulating nerves.
Right. But yeah, people usually notice it when they wear mouth guards or retainers at night, and those get worn through pretty quickly. So if you're finding that you're having to replace your night guard or your retainers even less than once a year, I think for most people, they manage to get them a year without completely grinding down through them. But even then, it just goes to show how much tension is in your jaw at night. I started doing mouth taping at night, which also been a really interesting experiment. Mouth taping in general is an interesting experiment because You have to come face to face with your own panic about not being able to breathe. But of course you can breathe because you have a nose and you're supposed to actually breathe in through your nose. That is more helpful when it comes to regulating your nervous system than breathing in through your mouth. We breathe in through our mouths when we need a lot of oxygen very fast. And that's why, again, as sexological body workers, when we're trying to upregulate people or get them into a state of arousal quickly, we will get them to breathe in through their mouth. That panting breath that you're used to hearing when you listen to porn or anything else, it's that mouth breathing that brings a hit of oxygen into your body very, very quickly, and it's going to upregulate you and cause arousal. But
Oxygenating yourself.
and so there's certain techniques like the Wim Hof technique or whatever else, when you really want to tip your body over into an oxygenated state where you're going to be doing maybe more mouth breathing. But for the most part, mouth breathing is A, not very healthy for you long term, and B, also way too upregulating for your nervous system, especially at night when you want to be downregulated and when you want to be sleepy. And so mouth taping has been amazing for my sleep, actually. I put it on every night. It's this weird tape. It's called hostage tape, which is a really bad name for tape, but okay. Whenever I put it on, my husband always then asks me a bunch of questions, which I can't answer because I have my mouth taped. And then he laughs. Thinks that's hilarious. But having the mouth tape on really just forces you to take those nice big deep breaths into your nose, which instantly gives you that hit of relaxation and just gets you ready for sleep, gets you ready for bed.
So have you put the tape on and found that you've been a little congested and you can hardly get any air in, and then you're maybe panicking, like, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. So you go into a little bit of distress. I'm curious if that's happened.
Last week I had flu and I definitely could not use my mouth tape while I had flu. I tried it and I almost choked because I couldn't breathe. And then I was like, nope, I'm not doing this. I'm already dying. I'm already uncomfortable. I already feel the worst. I'm not doing this. So when you are super congested, when you are so congested and so miserable that, you definitely don't want to make it worse, then don't use the mouth tape. But what I have found that's interesting is that if I'm just a little bit congested, it's fine because it will actually unblock my nose. Because the more I breathe in through my nose, the more my nose sort of says, right, one of us has to unblock here. And one of the nostrils just unblocks. I don't know how that happens. I'm not an ear, nose, throat doctor, so I don't know what the mechanism is for that. But it does appear that the body sort of regulates itself. There's always one nostril which is a little bit more congested than the other. Always.
Yeah.
And I've heard some people say if your right nostril is congested, then it means that you're feeling less creative. And if your left nostril is congested, then your ability to do rational thinking and logic puzzles is a little bit lower today. And I don't know the validity of that, but it's definitely something I've heard.
Accessing different parts of your brain, right?
Correct. But what is interesting is that clearly our nostrils are able to block and unblock either consciously or unconsciously at will. And so when the mouth is blocked, those nostrils do sort of kick in and unblock themselves, which is really cool.
And what is catching my attention is that the body is the subconscious and it holds so much information, all of our experiences. And when you approach your breathing like that at night, you're taping your mouth and you're retraining your body to respond to your environment, to just sleeping. It starts to recalibrate in different ways so that upon waking, you have more of an open breath. And like you said, you feel more rested. So during the day, I wonder if that kicks in more for you. If you notice you're feeling stressful, I don't know if perhaps the thought comes in like, oh, just step back and just take this breath, breathe in through my nose, because your body's getting programmed that way.
Yep, it definitely does. And you're right. I do wake up feeling way more rested when I tape my mouth at night than when I don't. When I wake up groggy and when I do tape my mouth, I usually tend to wake up far more crisp.
Yeah, I love that. I think I keep my mouth shut, but I should try.
Try it because it is interesting how much you avoid things like dry mouth as well.
Yeah.
I used to wake up with horrible dry mouth in the morning and it used to feel bad. And now with my mouth taped at night, it definitely isn't as bad, which is so nice. You don't
Oh,
have to
yeah.
wake up and feel that. Ugh.
Oh, yeah. This is nice.
Yeah.
I'm totally jumping to another area, so segue. But when we're wanting to retrain the body as well, so whether that's coordinating external and internal movement, let's say with the legs and our breath, we need to be in a downregulated state for that to actually be effective in the body. Because if we are upregulated and we're trying to work with the pelvic floor and we're thinking, let's just do these exercises, let's just get through it and go on with my day. If you can't find that space where you feel at ease and relaxed, your body's not going to really retain that information. It's not going to hold on that subconscious level. So with this, this lateral breathing, when you breathe in for a count of 2. And on your exhale, it's a count of 4. So you're teaching your lungs to expand in this shorter amount of time, and you're exhaling longer and training your body to slow down.
Yeah.
And it's important when you want to make these changes in your body, when you want to see a permanent change, not just a temporary thing.
What have you mostly noticed by doing those hyperpressives? Like, what do you feel in your body? You said you felt more of an elongated spine. What else are you feeling, or what else are you noticing when you stand and look at your body posture?
So I think my body's shifting in weight a little bit. I don't
Mhm.
weigh myself, but I can see that my clothes are fitting differently. But what I'm also noticing with just practicing this type of breathing is that, the line from your pubic bone up the rectus abdominis, the alveoli.
Mhm.
I have a little bit more of a defined line now. And
Interesting.
it is really interesting because I haven't seen that in, I don't know, 14 years. So there's a lot of components at play with this because I'm doing a lot of things. I'm changing the blood chemistry, right? It's liver, castor oil packing, doing gaps, and these hypopressives. So it's never just one thing, right? The 4 domains of health.
Biochemistry, biomechanics, emotions, and scar tissue.
Yeah, they all contribute to making shifts and changes within yourself. So I've noticed that structure in the abdominals are starting to come back. It's not from working my transverse abdominis, it's learning to relax my muscle. So when you exhale on the third breath, you take 3 breaths, and on the third one, you exhale all the air out and you just let the diaphragm suck back up. The hypopressives, you're retraining the diaphragm to do what it naturally does without you consciously moving everything. Neon is great for pelvic floor, especially if you're on a wedge on your back. You're just getting that relief of that tension from the pelvic floor. But what hypopressives is doing is reteaching that reflex muscle, just letting it breathe and do like this harmonic, what do you call the things? Accordion. Do accordion breathing, where it's expanding out and it's coming back together. So you're creating that resiliency in the pelvic floor. I also have interstitial cystitis, and that all those symptoms are tapering off. So
Interesting. That's so interesting because people always think of IC as being like a bacterial infection or something they need to take antibiotics for, but you're saying that even just breath work alone can be a huge relief for IC.
well, and I also think that the bladder is associated with fear. So if you spend a lot of time in worry and fear and projecting into the future, you're affecting this part of your body. I think that's a huge component of IC. So by learning to breathe, we're downregulating and we're present. So it's starting to shift the tension on the muscles and it's allowing them to actually work.
Yeah.
So the other thing that's interesting about the hypopressives, after you've learned just how to breathe and slow down, you start to add in these arm movements. If you hold your arms straight out from your hips, you keep fingers together and you reach through the pinky like you're being pulled left to right, you start to open, like we were talking, the neck,
Oh,
the pectorals, the
interesting.
rhomboids, and it's so freeing. And I think that's what's been like most exciting for me is all of this congestion is starting to rehabilitate itself and remember how it's supposed to function instead of the bulk muscles, the bigger muscles doing all the work, the aesthetic muscles, that's the word I'm looking for, doing the work. The ribs do the work so that my shoulders can relax and expand. So it's that what I think is so super exciting. I've had so much shoulder tension and I always thought it was from breastfeeding my children all night. long time and laying on one side. Was it that caused my clavicle breathing and shortness and thus in turn created a weaker pelvic floor? I don't know.
We'll never know. But
But
it's so interesting. Anyone who has prolapse or diastasis or needs extra pelvic floor support, look into hyperpressive breathing. That's the first thing to note there. And what Angie's saying is basically it just engages those deep core and pelvic floor muscles without excessive straining. It's not a hardcore exercise routine. It is just simple breathing techniques with very little movements that have a very big effect. And it works by creating a sort of a vacuum effect in the abdomen, which just helps to restore that pressure balance in the core. And it's so useful, especially postpartum. And
yeah,
what you said when you were teaching me earlier how to do it was that you exhale fully and then you sort of suck in the lower belly without inhaling, right? Without your breath.
use the verbiage of you don't do the sucking, but you push out your breath so much that there's really nothing left in there, like a balloon deflating, and like you're sucking the air out of it. And then you just release tension in your ribs, and that causes the abdomen to pull up and in. It's very minor. You're not going to see a lot of change in the beginning. It's a progressive practice to see
Yeah.
that shift. So you're just working with the reflexes of the body and letting them do it naturally.
That's so
You're
cool.
letting go, which is, I think, for a lot of women with pelvic floor issues, and this is obviously not true for everybody, but it's a high tone pelvic
Right.
floor because there's a lot of holding and gripping, anxiousness, especially as new mothers after having babies. I mean, we're in this constant state of upregulation. It's really hard to find that downregulation.
Yeah. And it's hard to be relaxed when you've got a little human you're trying to keep alive. You're literally trying to take care of another person and make sure they don't die. That's a lot of responsibility to have on you. And people are like, just relax, just breathe. Oh my God. You can't relinquish control when you're a mother. It takes us years until kids go off to college until we actually relinquish control.
If we're doing this podcast and my kids were running around, I would just be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm not as completely present in my body. I'm multitasking. I'm everywhere. So it does take those few moments to step away and to learn to breathe into that safety of your body in those spaces that can bring you that peace and that ease. But it's imperative that so many people learn to slow down. That's why we do the work we do, is so
Yeah.
that you can enjoy being in your body and experience more pleasure. And that's not just sexually, that is going to the bathroom. That is having sex. It is speaking
Eating
with other
food.
people in group settings, you know? It's all of that is encompassed in somatic embodiment work.
Exercise, just even a simple walk outside, all of those things. You learn to appreciate it and enjoy it more the better you breathe. Talking about that lateral thoracic breathing, again, expanding the rib cage down for the deeper support. It's a really powerful alternative to belly breathing for people who have weak pelvic floors or who have hypertonic muscles.
Yeah.
Lateral thoracic breathing is going to be really your best friend because it expands the ribs sideways rather than pushing the pressure downwards into your abdomen. And it increases your core stability and releases tension from that upper body. Just try it and see. And the way to do it, obviously, is you inhale and you expand your ribs sideways, kind of like filling up your lungs like an umbrella, if you can have that visual in your head. And just avoid pushing that pressure downwards into your belly. Try and push it more to the sides and to the back. And then just exhale fully and relax and see how that feels.
And a great way to start doing that is laying on your back on the ground.
Mhm.
That's going to slow you down too.
Yeah. Or even having a partner or a friend put their hands on your rib cage.
Absolutely. Co-regulating.
Co-regulating.
Yes.
I love it.
I find the older I get, the more connection I want. And
Yeah.
I used to be a big recluse. I mean, I still can be at times, raising 3 kids and all of that. But as I'm getting older, I'm realizing how much I want to be more in community and be with other people, just to be in space with other people and to feel myself in that space, connected. And
I mean, it depends which people. There are definitely people I do not want to see around.
tribe.
I don't want touching me. But
No, you'd be in your tribe.
yeah, exactly. You find your tribe, you find your people who you want to touch, and then have them touch you, and then breathe.
Yeah.
But interestingly, we were talking about it before, how a lot of people hold their breath. We see it a lot as well in sex pod, that people come in, and because we sometimes have people experience pleasure and show us as well how they are orgasming, a lot of them are holding. So what we tend to find is that people, the closer they feel they're getting to their orgasm, the more they are tensing up their muscles, and the more they are holding their breath and sort of pushing the breath down and holding it in their lower abdomen area, and just tensing until they can orgasm. And I think for a lot of people, when I've talked to them about this, they'll say, well, my orgasm just isn't very strong if I don't do that. That's the fear, is that they'll lose the power of their orgasm if they're not holding their breath and tensing, right? But what we know from practicing breathing during sex bod and mindful erotic practice and all of that is that the more you breathe, the more you feel,
Yeah.
the more pleasure you actually have access to. And is it weird in the beginning to try and breathe your way through an orgasm? Yes, it's really weird. And can you sometimes feel like, oh, that wasn't as good, or that wasn't high in the beginning? Yes, because you're learning a new skill. And learning a new skill almost never feels satisfying when you haven't mastered it yet. But then the more you are leaning into those circular waves of breath, the more you're actually enhancing your arousal, opening your energy flow through your whole body and not just your genitals, and allowing for those waves of orgasm to hit you over and over and over again.
And there's a vulnerability in that, right? And you release and decide to let go of all that you know in the way that you have experienced it, and you start to change that, you open yourself up to more experiences and more parts of yourself that you have not been able to access before. And that is a very gradual thing. And it takes a lot of patience and a lot of trying. But that's the beauty of sexological body work and working with someone else, is that you've cultivated this relationship that is safe and that is led by you. And you can grow and be as vulnerable as you want and just play around with what that feels like. Sex isn't always just about the orgasm. There's a lot of emotion in there, right?
Yeah.
So then the breath is the biggest part of that. Learning to let go of that control or that habitual way of doing things. And the breath opens us up to so much more that's awaiting our awareness and our consciousness, with just letting the body do what it will do and
Yeah.
surrendering to.
The Taoist way of breathing, the microcosmic orbit. If you Google microcosmic orbit or YouTube search it, you'll find plenty of videos of people doing it, usually with their hands out to the side. But it is a visualization practice as well. You inhale and you imagine your breath flowing up your spine. And then you exhale and imagine all your breath flowing down the front of your body, like all the way down to your genitals.
Yeah.
And then you again then pick it up from your genitals, from your perineum, and you breathe it up your spine, and then you're breathing it down to your genitals, and then up from your genitals up through your spine. And you're sort of keeping this orbit going, this microcosmic orbit. And you can also try adding in that subtle rocking or pelvic movement. So if you're not standing up, if you're lying down, rocking your body with those breaths can sometimes be really helpful as well.
And help to release here in the front too.
It is really interesting when you try that with sexual pleasure to see the levels that you can get to that you can't get to when you're just bearing down, clenching, holding your breath, tightening up. It's such a different kind of orgasm or orgasmic pleasure wave, but it's so expansive and it just feels like it's taking you somewhere. as opposed to just that elevator feeling of like going ding right up to the top and then just dropping right back down.
Yeah.
This feels like a journey that you go on.
I really want that right now.
Well, we only have a few more minutes of the podcast left, Angie, so you are more than welcome to go on that journey in 10 minutes.
I do love it.
But we also obviously will tell people to add sound to that. But sound as well, when we're adding sound, and that's why I think a lot of people get annoyed with the performative nature of when people make noises during sex, like that whole, right?
Yeah.
That typically comes along with the breath. But I think that sometimes when people are making sounds, it's actually helping them to track the breathing.
Yes.
And to release the tension and for them to notice like, oh, there is breath moving in and out of my body. Sometimes sound helps with that. We see it even in non-sexual things like tennis. Whenever you watch Wimbledon or, the US Open or something, and they hit the ball particularly hard, they're like, oh, I'm just doing all the sound effects. I just want to do all the sound effects for this podcast.
You like sound effects.
I do like sound effects. I'm an audio person in general. But I think it's really, really important to note how intertwined sound and breath also are, because when you are purposefully not making sounds, you are likely also restricting your breath.
Yeah. And making a sound, you have to exhale.
Right, you do.
You're actually engaging your ribcage when you do that. Everything contracting back down. And it takes that awareness. It takes an effort to make sound. Oh my gosh. Like if I even make a sound, just a ha, I can feel my shoulders drop. And keeping the tones lower is fantastic for opening up your root too.
Right.
Not just in sex, in childbirth as well.
Yeah. Like, remember my midwife saying, sound like a cow. The minute that you sound like a cow, I'll know that you're ready to push. And I was like, I don't want to sound like a cow. And she was like, that's the sound. You need
That
to.
is the sound. I love that you brought that up because my daughter, it's her birthday today, and she asked, well, tell me about my birth. And I told her that I had to lay down during the labor. And when I woke up, it was me making this. So the body doing what it does, right? And it was a natural low sound, just going on its own wisdom, which is what we're training the body to do with this breathing and this letting go, is let it come back to the wisdom that it innately has and is programmed with, that we've learned to override.
Yeah.
We've learned to just habitualize and stay in this state that feels familiar.
Yes.
Of letting that go and just watch what your body can do when you trust it and you allow for it to express itself in whatever form it wants to.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we've just basically socialized ourselves out of making sounds. So we've socialized our way out of proper breathing, because when you tell someone, breathe quietly, or this is like marriage in general, just breathe quietly. Why do you have to breathe so loud? Any sound that someone makes, and it's sort of like, oh, that's rude, or that's uncomfortable to have to hear someone make a sound. We're basically restricting them in a way. We're saying, don't be your full self, please. Be your full self, smaller, quieter, further away from me.
Yeah.
And there is a shrinking there. There's a shrinking of yourself when you just don't want to stand out in any way, when you don't want to make a sound, when you don't want to breathe too loud. And it's what we do when we learn how to masturbate as well. We do it really, really quietly so that no one will ever hear us. Like, try not to move, try not to breathe, definitely don't make a sound. And we somehow believe that we're maximizing our pleasure through all of that, which is really interesting.
And then get up and go do something. Don't allow yourself to linger in that pleasure, right? It's like, okay, I did the thing. Yeah, felt great. Okay, I'm out. I mean, that's what I did. I found my magic wand. I was like, oh my God, what is this thing, And it would happen so quickly. And then I'd be like, all right, let's go. I'm going to go play now.
Right.
Then feel how great your body is absorbing that release and those sensations all over.
I love that. So for how our listeners can apply some of the things that we've been talking about right now, what are some good ways for them to do a solo practice of just very basic breath work?
I would say the number one thing is lying down.
Right.
And Try the shorter inhale and just longer exhales. And when you're exhaling, don't be forceful. Just make it longer. So do the 2 inhale and a 4 exhale, or you could do 3 and 7. And as you lay on the floor, see if you notice any kind of movement in your back body, and stay with letting go what you're holding in the upper body as you inhale. And you'll notice it when you exhale, the tension, if you have it in the upper body. So when you exhale, go ahead and let that go. And then as you continue to practice, see if you can keep the neck relaxed so that your rib cage, your diaphragm start to do the muscular work of the expanding.
Yeah. And you can also add in some sound, some self-touch.
Yeah.
You can just try the breathing first and see how that works.
Yeah. Just get in with your breathing in this state that allows you to slow down.
Yeah.
And connect with your body.
And a good thing to do if you're doing this with a partner as well is to see what it feels like to sync your breath, your partner's, because that can be so up leveling to intimacy. It's unbelievable. Such a quick and easy way to attune to a partner is by syncing your breath and just using that deep, relaxed breathing, slowing down, and just notice how much that enhances your pleasure.
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
also if you are afraid to express sound in the bedroom, just play around with that.
Yeah.
Just play with that and see how that shifts. Your body's going to go, oh my God, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's fun to, come to an edge a little bit of something unfamiliar and experience that. And then you're still safe. You're still in your body.
Yeah. And you can try it on your own first in the safety of your own bedroom by yourself. And then you can maybe take it out to a yoga class with other people who are also doing that kind of breathing. So maybe it feels safer because you're not the only one. And then the more confidence you gain with it, maybe you'll feel more confident to make sounds in other places, like on the podcasts.
Talking with friends.
Exactly. What are the signs that your breathing is supporting you?
Mm. I notice when my breath supports me when I just feel awareness to my back body. That's a great question. Thank you. I think that's really important to ask. And I actually notice I can feel sensation in my sacrum. So I know I have a couple compressed nerves there. And when I breathe, I can feel that freedom when I'm actually expanding through my rib cage. How
Do you
about you?
notice deeper pleasure and sensitivity the more you breathe?
Yeah, definitely. Just helps me to slow down, really. I'm more of an upregulated person. So the slowing down and the full breathing helps me stay so focused in this moment.
Yeah. I notice that when I am conscious about my breathing, I also feel more open to things. Even psychologically, I will feel less closed minded, less
Mm.
narrow visioned if I just breathe.
Yeah.
So it does give me that little bit of extra space emotionally. And I definitely, on a physical point of view, I will notice that my core and my pelvic floor feel way more supported, less strained. Sometimes I'm so immune to the tension because it's just always there. And when it starts to drop away, that's when we actually notice it. So that's some signs that my breathing still needs some work.
That's such good noticing, though.
Yeah. And I would say also, we've done an episode on numbness. And if you haven't heard it, you should go back and listen to it because it's a good episode. But if you are feeling numb and disconnected from sensation, breathing also will bring you back into sensation and will help you to bring feeling to the numbness, or at least tackle what that numbness is. Numbness and breathing is a good combo because breathing helps to relieve numbness.
It just drops you right in to what you're noticing in the body,
Yeah.
being able to sit with that. I think sometimes if your mind's so busy and you are having a hard time catching your breath, it is helpful to maybe do a slower movement, slowing down your movement. So if you're running around doing a lot of things and you're feeling, let's say, disconnected or just thinking so much and you can't catch up with what's happening in the moment, just start to cut things in half by your speed. And then maybe take a child's pose or something like that. And you can also breathe into your back body that way. It's actually nice because your abdominals, your belly, your chest are against your thighs. Or you could lay on top of a pillow or a bolster on your belly. Just try breathing into your back body and feel the support of your chin and your head on the bolster. And that's another way to bring some awareness to the back body and rib breathing, back body rib breathing.
Love that. Cool. So we are almost done for today. So just a quick recap of our thoughts on breath today. Number one, most importantly, is that breath is essential for pelvic and sexual health. We've talked about that. We've also talked about some common mistakes in breathing and how to gently shift them with awareness. We've hopefully given you some good breathing techniques that you can try today on your own, or maybe you already tried them while you were listening to us. See if you notice a difference and let us know if you do or if you don't, because we'd like to hear from you.
Would love to hear any shifts, any kind of subtleties.
Yeah. So with that, thank you, Angie, for this amazing idea for today's podcast. You always bring the great topics.
Thank you, Sylvie. I love chatting with you because you have a wealth of knowledge as well.
Be in touch, listeners, and we will be back with some more cool topics for you to listen to next time on The Nerve to Heal.
Happy breathing.
You know that pull, that spark inside. Your body speaks, don't let it hide. It's time to listen, time to feel, time to tap into the nerve to heal. Let's break the silence, break the shame, reclaim your body, call your name, the nerve to heal. Let's go deep, unlock the wisdom your body keeps. Inside, your body speaks, don't let it hide. It's time to listen, time to feel, time to tap into the nerve to heal. Let's break the silence, break the shame, reclaim your body, call your name, the nerve to heal. Let's go deep, unlock the wisdom your body keeps. Break the silence, break the shame, reclaim your body, call your name, the nerve to heal. Let's go deep, unlock the wisdom your body keeps.